My name is Arthur Miller, and I'm 72 years old. For most of my life, I worked construction in Detroit, Michigan, the kind of backbreaking work that builds cities and breaks bodies. Double shifts were normal. Weekends were optional. I did whatever it took to provide for my family, especially my daughter Sophia. Family comes first, I always told her. That wasn't just words. It was how I lived. When Sophia wanted to go to Michigan State University, I worked 3 jobs to pay her tuition. When she got married and needed help with the down payment on her house in Bloomfield Hills, I liquidated my 401k without hesitation. When my grandchildren needed anything, Grandpa Arthur was there with his wallet open. I never complained about the work, not when my back screamed after 12-hour shifts laying concrete. Not when my lungs started burning from decades of breathing dust and chemicals on job sites. Not when other guys my age were retiring and I was still climbing scaffolding at 65. Sophia was worth every sacrifice. But bodies don't lie, and mine was telling a story I couldn't ignore anymore. The chronic cough got worse. My knees gave out climbing stairs. I needed help getting around, and my breathing became labored and noisy. What doctors called respiratory distress, but sounded like snoring to everyone else. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. That's when everything changed. Sophia, now 45 and living comfortably in her suburban paradise, started making comments. "Dad, your breathing is keeping the kids awake," she'd say with that practiced smile. "Maybe we should look into some options for you." The options conversation happened on a Tuesday morning in March. Sophia arrived at my small apartment in Dearborn with coffee, and that sweet tone she used when she wanted something. "Dad, I've been thinking," she said, settling into my worn recliner. "The kids are having trouble sleeping with all the noise, and honestly, this place isn't really suitable for someone with your needs." I studied her face, the same face I'd kissed goodnight for 18 years, the same face that had smiled when I handed her college graduation money, the same face that had hugged me when I co-signed for her dream house. "What are you suggesting, sweetheart?" I asked quietly. "There's this really nice assisted living facility in Warren. Clean, professional staff, proper medical care. I think it would be perfect for you." She reached over and patted my hand. "Just for a few weeks, until we can figure out something more permanent." I knew what more permanent meant. I'd seen it happen to other guys from the crew. Families who got tired of dealing with the inconvenience of aging parents, the promises of just temporary that became forever. "I see," I said simply. "You do understand, don't you, Dad? It's what's best for everyone, especially the grandchildren." I nodded slowly. "When were you thinking?" "Well, I already made some calls. We could get you settled in this weekend." Already made calls? Before even talking to me. That told me everything I needed to know about how temporary this arrangement was going to be. The weekend came faster than I expected. Sophia arrived with her husband Mark and their Ford Explorer, ready to transport me to Sunset Manor, the assisted living facility in Warren she'd chosen. The place looked decent enough from the outside, but I could tell it wasn't exactly the Ritz-Carlton. "This is just temporary, Dad," Sophia repeated as we walked through the lobby. "Just until we can figure out a better arrangement." I signed the papers without argument. The staff seemed professional, and my room was clean but basic. A single bed, a small dresser, and a window overlooking the parking lot. Not exactly the retirement I'd envisioned, but I'd lived through worse. What Sophia didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd been keeping a secret for almost 15 years. Back in 2010, I'd filed a workers' compensation claim against Morrison Construction, the company I'd worked for since 1985. After decades of exposure to asbestos, silica dust, and other toxic materials on job sites, my lungs were shot. The legal process took years, but in 2015, I received a settlement of $1.8 million. I never told Sophia about the money, not because I didn't trust her, but because I'd grown up during the Depression, and my father always said, "Never let anyone know what you're worth until you're dead." I'd invested most of it conservatively, lived off my Social Security, and kept working until my body couldn't handle it anymore. The first week at Sunset Manor was revealing. Sophia visited twice, brief obligatory stops where she'd ask if I needed anything and leave within 20 minutes. By the second week, the visits stopped entirely. Phone calls became texts, texts became silence. I wasn't surprised. I'd seen the signs months before. The way she'd check her phone when I was talking, how she'd find excuses to cut visits short, the subtle irritation when I needed help with simple tasks. I'd raised her to be independent, but I'd failed to teach her about loyalty. From my room, I started making some calls. The first was to Dr. Richard Evans, the attorney who'd handled my workers' compensation case. Richard had become more than a lawyer over the years. He was one of the few people who knew about my settlement, and he'd helped me manage the investments. "Richard, I need to make some changes to my will," I said during our phone call in my third week at Sunset Manor. "What kind of changes, Arthur?" "I want to remove Sophia as my primary beneficiary." There was a pause. "Arthur, that's a significant decision. Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "What would you like to do with the assets instead?" I'd been thinking about this since the day Sophia dropped me off. "I want to create a foundation, something to help elderly people who've been abandoned by their families." "That's actually a beautiful idea, Arthur. We can absolutely make that happen." The next call was to a real estate agent. The house in Dearborn where I'd lived for 30 years was still in my name, something else Sophia had never bothered to ask about. She probably assumed it would be part of her inheritance someday. "I need to sell my house," I told Janet Morrison from Century 21. "As quickly as possible." "Any particular reason for the urgency, Mr. Miller?" "I'm simplifying my life." The house sold within 6 weeks for $195,000. Not a fortune, but enough to add to my foundation fund. I had Janet deposit the proceeds directly into a separate account Richard had set up for the charitable trust. Meanwhile, Sophia's visits had stopped completely. 3 months passed without a single phone call. I learned from one of the nurses that she'd told the staff I was settling in well and didn't need frequent visits because it might disrupt my routine. That's when I realized the truth. This wasn't temporary. This was permanent. Sophia had found a way to warehouse me while she waited for me to die, leaving her free to live her life without the burden of an aging father. But I wasn't dead yet, and I had work to do. Richard came to visit me in month 4. We sat in the small visiting room, and he brought the paperwork I'd requested. "The Arthur Miller Foundation for Abandoned Seniors is officially established," he said, sliding the documents across the table. "The initial funding of $2. $1 million is secured, and we've outlined the mission statement exactly as you specified." I read through the papers carefully. The foundation would provide financial assistance, legal aid, and emotional support to elderly individuals who had been abandoned or neglected by their families. It would also fund investigations into elder abuse and advocate for stronger protections. "There's one more thing I need you to do," I said to Richard. "What's that?" "I want you to send a letter to Sophia. Nothing threatening, nothing dramatic, just a simple notification that there have been changes to my estate planning and that she should contact you if she has any questions." Richard nodded. "When would you like me to send it?" "Give it another month. Let her get really comfortable with the idea that I'm out of sight and out of mind." "Arthur, can I ask you something?" "Shoot. Are you doing this out of anger or out of principle?" I thought about it for a moment. "Both, I suppose, but mostly principle. I spent my whole life teaching her that family comes first. She chose to prove that lesson wrong. Now she gets to live with the consequences." Richard sent the letter on a Thursday in November. I knew because he called me that afternoon to confirm it had been delivered to Sophia's house in Bloomfield Hills. The letter was very straightforward, he assured me. Just a formal notification that you'd made changes to your estate planning and that she should contact my office if she had questions or concerns. I thanked him and hung up. Then I waited. It took exactly 3 days. My phone rang on Sunday morning, and for the first time in 7 months I heard my daughter's voice. Dad, it's Sophia. How are you feeling? The sudden concern in her voice was almost comical. I'm fine, sweetheart. What's the occasion? I got this weird letter from your lawyer. Something about changes to your estate. I was hoping we could talk about it. What would you like to know? Well, I just want to make sure you're making good decisions. Sometimes when people are in facilities like that, they can get confused or pressured into things. Pressured into things. That was rich, coming from the woman who'd pressured me into the facility in the first place. My mind is perfectly clear, Sophia. Of course it is, Dad. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise, it's just, well, maybe I should come visit you this week. We haven't talked in a while. 7 months. It had been 7 months since her last visit, but she called it a while. That would be nice, I said simply. Great, how about Wednesday? We could have lunch together. I'll look forward to it. Wednesday came, and so did Sophia. She arrived with flowers, daisies from the grocery store, and that same practiced smile I remembered from our last conversation. Dad, you look great, she said, though I could see her taking inventory of my appearance, probably wondering how much longer I had left. We sat in the dining room, and she made small talk about the kids, her job, the weather. Finally, she got to the point. So, about that letter from your lawyer. What about it? I'm just wondering what kind of changes you've made. I know you've always planned to leave everything to me, and I want to make sure nobody's taking advantage of you. I set down my coffee cup and looked at her directly. Nobody's taking advantage of me, Sophia. Good, so what kind of changes are we talking about? I've decided to leave my assets to charity. The color drained from her face. Charity? Yes. I've established a foundation to help elderly people who've been abandoned by their families. She stared at me for a long moment. Dad, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. But what about me? What about your grandchildren? You always said family comes first. I did say that, and I lived by it for 72 years. But you taught me that the feeling isn't mutual. That's not fair, Dad. I've been busy with work and the kids. Was going to visit more often, You dropped me off here 8 months ago and told me it was temporary. You visited twice and called once. I think that speaks for itself. Her voice started to rise. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The kids have activities, Mark's been traveling for work, and I've been trying to manage everything on my own. And I've been sitting in this room waiting for my daughter to remember I exist. The tears started then, not sad tears, but angry ones. You can't just cut me out of your will. I'm your daughter. Yes, you are. And I'm your father. But you seem to have forgotten that until you got a letter from a lawyer. Dad, please. Let's talk about this rationally. Maybe we can work something out. I could visit more often, bring the kids to see you. Now you want to bring the kids? The same kids whose sleep was being disrupted by my breathing. She flinched. I was just concerned about their routine. And this place really is better for your health needs. Their routine, not their relationship with their grandfather. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She wiped her eyes and tried a different approach. Dad, what if I moved you to a nicer facility, somewhere closer to home? I could visit every week, I promise. This facility is fine, Sophia, and your promises don't mean much to me anymore. You're being stubborn and cruel. I'm being realistic. You've shown me where I stand in your priorities. Now you're seeing where you stand in mine. She stood up abruptly. I need to talk to your lawyer. This is insane. His number is on the letterhead. Dad, please, just think about what you're doing. You're destroying our relationship over a misunderstanding. Our relationship was destroyed when you decided I was too inconvenient to be part of your life. That's not true. When did you last call me before today, Sophia? She opened her mouth, then closed it. When did you last visit before today? Silence. When did you last bring my grandchildren to see me? More silence. The only misunderstanding here is that you thought I'd sit quietly in this room and wait to die while you got on with your life. She gathered her purse and jacket. I'm going to fight this, Dad. This isn't over. You're welcome to try. After she left, I sat alone in the dining room for a long time. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but a quiet satisfaction that comes from finally telling the truth. The next morning, Richard called. "Your daughter contacted my office yesterday evening," he said. "She wants to schedule a meeting to discuss your estate planning." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd be happy to meet with her, but that all decisions regarding your estate are entirely yours to make, and you appeared to be of sound mind when you made them." "Good." "Arthur," she seemed quite upset. "I'm sure she was. Reality has a way of doing that to people." The meeting between Sophia and Richard took place the following week. I wasn't there, but Richard filled me in on the details later. "She came in with a legal pad full of questions," he told me during his visit. "She wanted to know about your mental capacity, whether you'd been influenced by anyone, if there were grounds to contest the will." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're completely lucid, that all decisions were made independently, and that you have every legal right to dispose of your assets as you see fit." "How did she take it?" "Not well. She asked if there was any way to reverse the changes. I told her only you could make that decision." "And?" "She asked if I thought you might change your mind if she," and I quote, "made more of an effort to be involved in your care." I almost laughed. "What did you say to that?" "I told her that your decision seemed to be based on a pattern of behavior over many months, not a single incident, and that attempts to manipulate you now would probably have the opposite effect." Smart man. She didn't like that answer. Over the next few weeks, Sophia tried everything. She started calling daily, sometimes multiple times a day. She brought the kids for visits, awkward, forced encounters where she coached them to hug Grandpa and tell him how much they missed him. She even offered to move me into her house, claiming they'd make adjustments to accommodate my needs. I was polite but firm. No amount of sudden attention was going to undo 8 months of abandonment. Meanwhile, the Arthur Miller Foundation was becoming reality. Richard had connected me with a social worker named Maria Santos, who specialized in elder care advocacy. Together, we'd identified the first recipients of assistance. Elderly people in situations similar to mine, abandoned by families who found them inconvenient. "Mr. Miller," Maria said during one of our planning sessions, "this foundation is going to help so many people. We're already getting referrals from social workers, nursing homes, and legal aid societies." "That's the point," I said. "Nobody should have to go through what I went through. The irony is that your daughter's actions are going to help hundreds of other families avoid the same mistake. Maybe that's justice." The foundation officially launched in March, almost exactly 1 year after Sophia had dropped me off at Sunset Manor. The Detroit Free Press ran a story about it. "Local man creates foundation to help abandoned seniors." They didn't mention Sophia by name, but anyone who knew our family could read between the lines. The article quoted me saying, "Too many elderly people are treated as burdens by the very families they spent their lives supporting. This foundation exists to give them dignity and resources when their own children fail them." That's when the real consequences started hitting Sophia. Her friends began asking questions. Her neighbors started treating her differently. The staff at her kids' school, some of whom had read the article, looked at her with barely concealed judgment. Word spread through her social circle that she'd abandoned her father in a nursing home while he was secretly sitting on millions of dollars that would now go to charity. She called me, crying, "Dad, people are talking about me. They think I'm a terrible person." "Are you? That's not fair. You're making me look like a monster." "I'm not making you look like anything, Sophia. I'm just living my life." "But the foundation, the newspaper article, it's obvious you're talking about me." "I never mentioned your name." "You didn't have to. Everyone knows I'm your daughter." "Yes, they do. And now they know what kind of daughter you are." "Please, Dad, can't we work this out? I'll do anything." "You had 8 months to do something. You chose not to." "I was scared, okay? Scared of seeing you getting old and sick. It reminded me that I'm going to lose you someday and I couldn't handle it." It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. "Fear is understandable, Sophia. Abandonment isn't. I know I was wrong, but please don't let this destroy our relationship forever." Our relationship was destroyed the day you decided I was too inconvenient to be part of your life. I'm just acknowledging that reality. What if I moved you to a better facility? What if I visited every day? What if you'd done any of those things because you loved me, not because you wanted my money? She had no answer for that. The foundation grew rapidly. Within 6 months, we'd helped 43 elderly people with everything from legal aid to emergency housing to medical expenses. More importantly, we'd connected them with support groups and volunteer visitors, people who understood what it felt like to be forgotten by family. I moved out of Sunset Manor into a small but comfortable apartment with the foundation's help. I had round-the-clock care when needed, but I maintained my independence and dignity. I spent my days working with Maria and the other staff, reviewing applications, and meeting with the people we were helping. It was the most meaningful work I'd ever done. Sophia's attempts to reconcile continued for months, but they felt hollow and desperate. She was motivated by guilt and social pressure, not love. She'd learned that actions have consequences, but she'd learned it too late. The last time I saw her was at the Foundation's first anniversary celebration. She showed up uninvited, stood in the back of the room, and watched as I spoke to a crowd of supporters and beneficiaries about the importance of treating elderly people with dignity. "My father always told me that family comes first," I said to the audience. "It took me 73 years to understand that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up when someone needs you." I saw her leave before I finished speaking. 2 years later, I'm still here. Still working with the foundation, still helping people who've been abandoned by their families. My health isn't great, but my spirit is strong. I wake up every morning knowing that my life has purpose, that my sacrifices meant something, and that I'm leaving the world a little better than I found it. Sophia still calls occasionally, always on holidays or birthdays, always with that same forced cheerfulness. We have brief, polite conversations about the weather and her kids' activities. She never mentions the foundation, and I never mention forgiveness. Some people might say I was too harsh, that I should have given her another chance. But I've learned that the people who say that usually haven't spent 8 months sitting alone in a nursing home, wondering if their own child remembered they existed. The truth is, I don't hate Sophia. I pity her. She had the chance to be the daughter she always claimed to be, and she chose convenience over love. Now, she gets to live with that choice for the rest of her life. As for me, I'm at peace. I spent my whole life believing that family comes first, and I was right. I just had to create a new family, one that includes every elderly person who's been forgotten, every volunteer who shows up to help, and every supporter who believes that age deserves respect. That's a legacy worth leaving. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.